Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a mystery film called Black Mountainside. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie opens on a dark winter night in northern Canada, where a group of archaeologists is gathered around a poker table in a remote research outpost. They banter about the cold and their plans for the upcoming winter. Here, we meet the communication expert Jensen, project director Francis, his assistant Steven, equipment technician Drew, field supervisor Robert, and also a medical doctor named Richard. Two of those characters share names with my uncles, so I hope they make it to the end. The next morning, a helicopter arrives near the cabin, and in it, another archaeologist named Professor Olsen appears. He has come to monitor the research and report the findings to get more funding for the project. The team then greets him enthusiastically and takes Olsen inside the cabin. After settling in, Olsen is led outside to see the excavation, where the team explains that over the past 3 years, they have been uncovering very old items from the Ice Age. Francis shows Olsen a clay pot with unusual symbols, and it was dated to around 11,000 BC, but was found under layers that are about 14,000 years old. Drew adds that about a week ago they started uncovering what might be the roof of a structure sticking out from the ground. Olsen thus realizes that if this discovery is real, it could change history. We also learn that they have hired some local workers who live in a nearby town for the excavation work. They leave very early because the sun goes down very fast, with only 5 hours of daylight each day. Soon, night falls and they return to the cabin, and Olsen is also shown to his room, which is next to the room of the chef named Ramus. Later, the team is relaxing in the living room when Ramus's cat appears and hangs out with them. Ramus then informs Jensen that they are running out of food and supplies, so Jensen says he will ask for them tomorrow. The team then drinks and celebrates the discovery, saying it could be the greatest archaeological find ever. The next day, Jensen radios the town station to request more food and supplies, and they agree to send them. Over the following days, winter arrives in full force, and the long Arctic nights with only 5-hour days start to wear everyone down. One day, while they are in the living room discussing their findings, Olsen states that as an archaeology expert, it is impossible for the structure to exist there. Drew replies that he believes it might be something extraterrestrial, but the others just laugh at this.
Aliens? We're talking about mole people. Fucking idiot.
At that moment, they are interrupted by the news that Ramus's cat has been found dead. Next, the team immediately heads to the excavation site and finds the poor cat dead and mutilated. This deeply disturbs them, as they wonder who would do such a cruel thing. Jensen then questions the workers, and one of them claims to have seen Drew killing the cat, but has no idea why he would do it. Upon hearing this, Jensen asks Drew over the radio if he killed the cat, but Drew casually denies the accusation. He calmly tells Jensen that he has faith in him and asks him to find the real culprit. The next day, a noise wakes Olsen, and it turns out to be a furious Jensen, who reveals that all the workers have suddenly left. This leaves everyone confused, wondering why they would leave in the middle of the night with no supplies. Francis suggests that the workers might have been frightened by the cat's death, as they are probably superstitious. Jensen says they can't continue like this, and rushes to call the radio to request more workers. At that moment, something shocking happens when Steven begins to vomit black liquid, which horrifies everyone. Richard thus takes him to his office and gives him some medicine. "Take some Advil, you freak." Later, Jensen tries to contact the town station via radio, but fails to reach anyone, leaving him frustrated. The next day, the team decides to investigate the area to track where the workers went. They follow the footprints and soon realize the workers were heading north, which is away from civilization. This confuses them, as in that direction the workers would likely freeze to death, with nothing to sustain them. That night, they turn on the generators and realize that their supplies will only last for 2 weeks, which will cause serious problems afterward. A frustrated Jensen calls Drew to check the radio, and Drew says the radio is working perfectly, and he doesn't understand why they cannot reach anyone. Meanwhile, Olsen and Francis are seen discussing the situation, and it turns out they've found several stone piles used to mark hunting sites. Olsen explains that the area is full of bear traps, revealing that a civilization once lived here thousands of years ago. They cannot understand how a community that that stayed in one place for so long could suddenly leave, and Olsen suggests that something must have made the area unsafe for them. Later, they hear that Steven is having a problem, so everyone goes to the doctor's office. There, they notice something moving in Steven's arms, and he is acting erratically, so everyone restrains him and tries to calm him down. With no other option, they apply a tourniquet to his shoulder and proceed to mutilate his arm. Steven screams in pain while the men collapse back in shock. Richard then administers morphine, after which they wrap Steven with a blanket. Olsen anxiously questions Francis about how it started, so Francis says they saw a rash earlier, but none anticipated amputation. The men are shaken, and they realize this incident is likely related to the excavation site. Elsewhere, we see Francis in his room, who hears a voice from outside calling his name and asking him to look outside.
Come on, Francis. Fucking do it, Francis.
The following day, Jensen enters the cabin, where he is horrified to see that Drew has cut his hands. Jensen quickly calls everyone, right as Drew begins to act erratically too, but they all hold him to calm him down, after which Richard takes him to his office for a checkup. Richard says he hasn't seen anything like this before, and worries that Drew might die if they don't get him to a hospital soon. That night, Jensen is in his room when he hears the voice of a mysterious person asking him to go outside and follow their lead. Jensen agrees and heads out into the snow when he notices something that shocks him. The next day, Jensen speaks about this with Richard, though he concludes it was just a nightmare. He says he feels like he is being watched by someone, but claims that the watcher is not human, but something else. Later, Francis and Olsen receive the photos and artifacts they have uncovered, and Olsen notes that every artifact features animal imagery. He says that all the artifacts were found within 30 feet of the structure, and that the animals are depicted as godlike creatures. He points out the repeated deer carvings and theorizes that this deer god must be very important to the people who made them. Jensen then concludes that what they have likely found is a shrine or temple of the deer god. Olsen theorizes that it is possible there is a disease preserved in the ice from centuries ago. As the ice age passed, this virus was defrosted, and it caused people to act abnormally. He suggests this might be the reason why the civilization abandoned the site. We then return to Jensen, who is approached by Robert, who reveals that he heard someone talking outside his room. Jensen says it's probably nothing, but Robert gets very angry because the events happening do not make sense. He thinks someone is deliberately harassing them, but Jensen doesn't believe it, which leads to an argument between them. Elsewhere, Francis is in his cabin when he hears a voice telling him to look at the trees. He obliges, and soon sees a deer standing on its two hind legs.
You like this shit, Francis?
Leaving him shocked. The next day, the team gathers, and their eyes widen in horror when they find Drew, who has shot himself. A stunned Olsen asks Richard to do an autopsy to see what was wrong with him. Later, Richard gathers everyone and reveals that under a microscope, he found a tiny cephalopod-like organism in Drew's tissue. He explains how Drew's human muscle cells were slowly transforming into octopus cells, and says he does not understand what could cause that. Aside from maybe an anime addiction, he states that Steven must immediately go to a hospital, or he might also become the next victim. Upon hearing this, Olsen realizes the infection is caused by ancient bacteria revived from the ice. He says first thing tomorrow, he wants the structure reburied, the artifacts quarantined, and the whole site sterilized. Upon hearing this, Jensen gets upset, since he has spent 3 years on this research and does not want to lose that progress. But Olsen reminds him that one of their team members is already dead, and decides to put everyone's safety above everything else. Soon, night falls again on the camp, and Francis is on watch when he hears the mysterious voice again, asking him to come closer. Francis obliges and heads to his room, where he notices the same deer entity playing tricks on him. The entity tells Francis that the others are talking about him because they think he is going mad. It urges Francis to grab a knife for his protection, which he does. Just then, Jensen enters the room and tells Francis that they've decided to quarantine everything starting first thing tomorrow. During this time, the voice urges Francis to kill Jensen immediately, but Francis resists the commands and stays in control. Later, Olsen goes to check on Steven, who is in the doctor's room, and is horrified to see that Francis has killed him. Olsen quickly rings the alarm while demanding to know why Francis did it. Francis erratically explains that the man was in pain, and that Steven himself asked Francis to kill him. He claims he cut Steven's wrist, but he didn't die, so he cut his throat. But Steven kept screaming, poisoning, so he had to cut off his head, yet he still didn't die. At this moment, the others arrive upon hearing the alarm, and everyone is horrified by the sight. They then restrain Francis and lock him in a room while he continues to insist that it was Stephen who made him do it, but they refuse to listen and leave, while the mysterious entity tells Francis he did well. The following day, Olsen is sitting near Drew's corpse when suddenly the dead body begins speaking to him. The corpse talks about Oncochera volvulus, which lays its larvae in human skin that can survive in the eyeball. Olsen is alarmed and asks it to shut up, but the dead body continues saying how it infects about 5 million people per year. This angers Olsen so much that he begins hitting Drew's head with a rifle and crushes it. At this moment, Richard arrives and is shocked by the sight, so Olsen explains that the dead body was speaking to him about maggots. However, Richard thinks he's hallucinating and gives him some sleeping pills before asking him to rest. The next day, Jensen goes to check on Francis, who asks if he can see the deer entity. He claims it is in the same room and directly behind Jensen. Jensen can't see anyone, but he feels spooked and decides to leave, even though Francis begs him to stay. Later, Jensen is packing his stuff when Robert confronts him and accuses him of trying to abandon them. Jensen explains that he was just heading out to seek help and wasn't planning on abandoning them, but Robert refuses to believe him, leading to a huge argument between them. In the evening, Jensen arrives at Robert's cabin and asks when the last time he slept was, but Robert has no idea. Jensen tells him to get some rest and that he will take over watch, but Robert refuses as he doesn't trust him. Jensen then gives him some food, but Robert suspects it's poisoned and refuses to eat. Sometime later, we see Robert walking up to Francis's cabin, and in a shocking twist, he shoots Francis dead. He then goes to Richard's cabin and ends up killing the doctor as well. He soon comes across Jensen and shoots him, but Jensen shoots back as well. Robert dies immediately, while Jensen is left alive but gravely wounded. Later, Olsen finds the bleeding Jensen and helps patch up his wounds, though he isn't very skilled at it. Jensen asks him to leave and seek help from the nearby town, so Olsen agrees and runs away. But just then, Jensen hears the deer entity's voice asking him to stop Olsen. However, Jensen refuses and takes a box of dynamite from nearby, preparing for what's coming. Elsewhere, Olsen is in the woods when he comes across the deer entity who speaks to him. The entity explains how when ants look at the sky, they see dots, while humans see galaxies. In a shocking twist, he reveals that he is the creator of the stars, galaxies, and everything. But Olsen refuses to believe this and says that if he were a god, he wouldn't have killed people like this or turned them against each other. However, the entity says he is not here to justify himself or make Olsen follow him. Olsen claims he is leaving this place, but the entity asserts that he is omnipotent and omnipresent, able to be anywhere at any time. At this moment, we see Jensen at the same ancient structure they had uncovered. He curses the deer entity and blows up the dynamite, which destroys the artifact as well. Jensen also dies in the process, and with this, the entity's voice also stops. After this, the nightmare is finally over, and Olsen is the only survivor left. Soon, daylight appears, and it seems like Olsen might make it out alive, but in a shocking twist, he suddenly stumbles into a bear trap. The movie ends as we hear Olsen screaming in pain, while his fate remains uncertain. Did either of my uncles make it to the end? Sound off in the comments below.